Hey everyone, I am very excited to share with you the first episode of my new podcast series, Invested, where I chat with other creators, founders, and business leaders who are making their mark on this world. In today's episode, I sit down with Brett Dashevsky, the founder of Creator Economy NYC, a thriving community here in New York that has become a hub for top creators, innovative companies, and visionary VCs to meet and grow together. Brett hosts monthly events throughout the city, ranging from panels with inspiring individuals to fun rooftop mixers. It was at one of these events that I met Brett and realized he had an amazing story to tell. Prior to Creator Economy NYC, Brett was the co-founder of a successful newsletter called Healthcare Huddle. After growing the newsletter exponentially, he successfully sold the media company to Workweek, where he then took on a role advising other platforms and creators in their portfolio. He now is at an inflection point in his career where he is diving into growing Creator Economy NYC, as well as building out a software tool for creators. Brett is a wealth of knowledge on all things Creator Economy and is quite the creator himself. I've really enjoyed this conversation with Brett, and I'm sure you will too. We talk a lot about our guiding principles and what advice that we have for people who want to make things happen in their life. Thank you again to Brett for coming on. And with that, let's get into the episode. So, Brett, thank you so much for coming in here. I am so excited for this. I know we were just talking off camera and I was saying, I've been putting this off for so long and you got to just jump into it. So it is an honor to have you as the first guest, and I'm sure you won't be the last. So thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I'm the first guest. There's a lot of pressure here, but yeah, I'm excited.
Yes, no pressure at all. So, Brett, you work on a ton of things. I know you from one area of your life, but you look at your LinkedIn, there's a lot going on. I'm curious how you introduce yourself and kind of the typical elevator pitch at a cocktail happy hour. What do you say you do? Who are you?
Yeah.
In a short 30 seconds, because there's a lot going on.
Yeah, that's an amazing question. And it's funny, I was just talking to my brothers about that because I recently left my full-time job. I was at a Creator Economy media company called Workweek. And usually when I went to go introduce myself to someone or someone asked me, what do I do? The main thing that I would say is I do X at Workweek.
Yeah.
And it got me thinking, like, why do I default to, let's say, my quote unquote W-2 job?
Right. Yeah.
Is it because I feel like when someone asks me that type of question or I'm introducing myself, I feel like I need to share what I perhaps identify as like work in a sense? But I am working on other stuff that I am a lot more passionate about and put a lot more effort into.
Yeah.
That I more recently, having left Workweek, have shifted into introducing myself as what I do. And so the first thing that I usually introduce myself that I want to do is right now is Creator Economy in New York City, which is a community that I've been building here. But it's interesting. I sometimes think it depends on the environment. So
right.
I'm working on a software tool for creators that leverages AI. And so if I ever happen to maybe be in an environment where there's a lot more tech or AI people, I may start off with that. But generally, at least right now, I'll default to the thing that I am most passionate about and that I feel most identified with.
Right.
And that is Creator Economy New York City. And so when I started to see Creator Economy New York City, or Creator Economy NYC, or CNIC for short here, as more of like my identity, I would mention what I was doing from a full-time job standpoint, but then also start to add in, but I also do X on the side.
Right.
And so when I left my full-time job, it actually was like a weird transition. I'm like, I have to change up my pitch. So I think it really comes down to like what you identify with. And my younger brother right now, he's been building his own media company focused on hip hop and music called Soundcentric. So shout out to Soundcentric. And he's looking for a full-time job. He just recently graduated. And he was talking about how, like, when someone asks him, like, if he introduces himself or someone asks him, what does he do? He'll be like, oh, I'm unemployed right now. I'm looking for a job.
Sure.
And I'm like, why do you default, or why do we in general default to that, like, full-time job W-2? When I say W-2, I'm like, you're a tax employee. Why do we default to that? And I said, you should be saying, oh, I currently run, a media company focused on hip hop. I do a podcast, and I'm also looking for full-time opportunities to kind of like coincide with that. So I think a lot of people should, adjust what their pitch is and also kind of like keep it agile for the environment that they're in. With what makes sense and what they're comfortable saying. But at the end of the day, I think it comes down to like, what are you identifying with most, and perhaps like, what are you most excited to dive into and talk about?
Yeah, no, it's interesting because I can relate to that, kind of that context switching. For me, this YouTube channel and all this creator stuff is a big, huge part of my life. But at the same time, I have a W-2 job. I have that 9 to 5, and depending on where I am, context, okay, I work for JP Morgan, or no, now I'm a YouTuber that works full time. And it's just really interesting kind of choosing how I identify. That was something I kind of struggled with for a while, is like, what is that identity? Is YouTube really just something I do on the side? It felt like I was kind of discounting the amount of work that I put into it, and it's an interesting thing. So I think that's a really interesting answer. But I guess you kind of alluded to it, but you recently did leave your full-time job at Workweek. What kind of inspired you to do that, take this leap of faith, and kind of what's in store? What's the next step here?
I've just been really leaning into the current projects that I'm working on. Transparently, wasn't fully my decision to leave at Workweek. However, it's one of those moments where it's like, well, you've been thinking about it, and now like here's this message that's come to you to like, okay, maybe it's time to lean into those other things that you've been wanting to lean into. And so for me, it was exciting because I fortunately have already been working on a lot of side projects that I was devoting a lot of like part-time focus to, which is totally okay when you're working a full-time role. And I'm still in the process of seeking a full-time role that, again, synergizes with what I'm working on the side. And it was exciting that I can now put a lot more time into setting myself up for further success with some of the elements that I wanted to add to what I'm working on. So, for example, with the community that I've been running, you've attended some of the events. It's just been the monthly events, and I've been really itching and feeling a need to add a newsletter layer to keep frequent weekly touch points with the community and social media stuff that I just simply have not been doing due to time constraints or not wanting to overwhelm myself and lose focus on just keeping the cadence of the monthly events. So this not having this full-time aspect has allowed me to lead into that and basically set myself up to keep kind of the ball moving nicely when I ultimately do add a full-time layer, which I'm going to do. But my goal with the new full-time role is something that helps elevate what I'm working on the side with the community, with the AI tool I'm building, but then also that will help the full-time roles, right? There's a lot of things that are synergistic. And it's not as exhausting with the context switching. Like for you, for example, moving from finance to then the content creation world, there maybe isn't a lot of synergies there, right? And it can be very exhausting mentally because there's a lot of switching on, switching off. But working on a lot of things in general is exhausting, but it helps when the lines between them are kind of blurred, and it's a lot easier to kind of shift in and out.
So you, of course, mentioned the Creator Economy in NYC. That is how we met, and I'm grateful for that. What was the motivation behind that? I mean, it's been amazing to go to those events. I'm always so impressed by the people that are there. I go to a lot of networking events here in New York, and sometimes people are clearly just there for free drinks, and it's not always the best conversation, but everybody really plays a role in it. And so I've just been really impressed by that. Like, how did that start? What motivated you to kind of get that ball rolling?
Yeah, I appreciate hearing that. That's super motivating to hear. And I really do think the people the community have made the events on. I'm just a facilitator there. So the whole idea sparked in 2021. I attended a happy hour here in New York City. Someone organized a Creator Economy happy hour. I guess this is when the Creator Economy.
Yeah, I can say that.
Folk like, what is the Creator Economy? And I showed up to the event, and it was at like a really tight bar. And I was able to introduce myself and meet a lot of people. And like, this was also like kind of fresh after COVID. So it was like really weird, like being in person, meeting people face to face, especially in this industry that, I'm much more officially entered into. And I left that night. I think I stayed like the latest, but I left that night so fueled about like the future of this industry and just hyped that I was able to have these conversations in person, which was just so exciting. And I remember like going to my girlfriend, and like I just like couldn't stop talking about what just happened. It was like my first day of school.
Right.
And I wanted to keep them going. And so at the time I wasn't living in New York City. And I told myself that when I moved to New York City, I am going to I'm going to host what the hosted that. I'm going to keep that going. And I didn't move to the city until last November, but I was part of the city. I was staying with my girlfriends for a while. I was living in New Jersey, so I wasn't too far away. So I kind of still had this identity here and was working here. And I told myself that, look, going into 2024, from like an identity habits or identity goals type of position, James Clear talks about that. I was like, I am going to be a connector of the creator economy. How am I going to do that? I'm going to host monthly meetups. And I just was very casual about it. I'm like, I'm going to choose a bar out of my own desire to have that same experience that I had at that first meetup.
Okay.
And I just chose Hair of the Dog. For a while, throughout November, December, I was planning too much. I'm like, okay, what do I want the purpose of this to be? What is important to nail down? Then I'm like, what venue should I have it at? Well, what if I get 30 people that come instead of 20? Should I change the venue? And I was like, all right, think about when I'm talking to content creators and I'm creating myself, what do I tell myself? Publish over perfect.
Right.
Just publish it. You'll figure it out as you go. So I'm like, okay, screw it. I'm just going to choose a venue. So I chose Hair of the Dog in Lower East Side. Reached out to a couple people that I met at the previous event and just like on social media. It ended up getting 15 to 20 people showed up. And I was like, 15 to 20 people just showed up to this event that I'm organizing. And I was like, all right, it's go time to keep it going every single month. And so did a lot of just meetups and happy hours, I guess you can call it, up until July, when all of a sudden I partnered with a company out here called Versi. And Ami, who was a founder there, was like, oh yeah, we have an event here. We'd love to sponsor it. But what are your thoughts on doing like a speaking event? And I'm like, speaking event? Like that was something I was going to maybe start doing in 2024.
Yeah.
But they're like, why am I going to wait? Let's just do it.
Yeah.
Because in my mind, I was like, whoa, this maybe is getting a little too serious, or this is more serious than I thought it was. And that's kind of sometimes I feel like how the best things are built. Like you don't start it with the intention to build something, big or that was like legit, but just the traction from the people coming and enjoying it. It all made sense. And so I interviewed Tim Gisano, who I actually met at one of my previous events in March, and he was so ecstatic about joining. And then from there, just kept the events going and then leaned into panels.
Yep.
Now here we are in December, having hosted 10 events, so roughly one a month. I basically hit my goal and planning to do the same in the new year. But it all started out of my own desire to just be in the room with the very people that I was seeing or interacting with on social media. And I'm like, let's take these conversations into real life. Let's know each other. Let's understand how each other look and how we talk. Like those things are so important and lead to so much better conversation and ultimately to relationships that will help propel just the creator economy in general forward.
Totally.
Just through the conversations and relationships that are out there.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it was perfect timing. You mentioned the first thing you went to was 2021. I wasn't in the city yet, but I understand just where New York was. And even kind of just my day job, we see a huge shift of people wanting that in-person interaction.
Yeah.
I moved here at a time because I wanted to be in person. I wanted to meet people. I wanted to be a part of that lifestyle. And I think there's a lot of things that contributed to just being the right place at the right time. But you mentioned kind of you finally partnered with Versi. What made you take that step from, okay, this is just going to be a happy hour where I organize, big post flyers and people show up, to, okay, we're going to work with brands, because I'm sure that's a little bit more work on the back end, also then I'm sure moving forward, then it's a lot of pitching. I don't know kind of what that interaction is, but are companies coming to you saying, hey, we would like to do this? Or do you kind of have to go out of your way to make that happen? Because, you work with some amazing startups here at great locations. So I'm curious kind of how it went from Hair of the Dog to, full scale production with great hosts.
Yeah. So I actually, after the first event at Hair of the Dog, I included in the post-event email, I just coming from the media world, I know that sponsorships are what fuels a lot of stuff. And I added at the end of the email, when thank you for coming, I'm like, and by the way, if any brands are out there interested in partnering, would you be down to partner? And I had one person reach out to me, and that ended up helping host the event in February. I've got this company called Infuse. They worked with influencers. said the same thing in the next post-event email. And I had someone from Mechanism who they sponsored 2 events at their beautiful offices. They reached out and helped to organize stuff, and that was phenomenal. And then I think a lot of these sponsorships kind of slowed over time. I had to do like a lot more digging. And so I realized, well, I have this community, so I'm just going to send an email like, hey guys, I have an event coming up in April. Anyone down to sponsor? And then someone reached out, this company called Grand Stage, and was like, how much is it? What's the, what does it look like? And they were willing to sponsor, so I was appreciative of them. And that kind of continued. So a lot of it remained inbound. Like people were just reaching out, and I realized, okay, I partner, but I was the one being outward about the fact that like we can partner. And then I think I was put in touch with a couple different companies, and then I basically like outbound reached out to them and was like, hey, exciting opportunity. I run this community here, and now I feel like I'm doing a lot more of that and want to continue, especially as I try to plan ahead in the new year. But it was been a little mixed. I was honestly surprised so early on that these companies and individuals are willing to step up and be like, hey, we have this, they buy all this space. Sure. We could use it. I'm like, amazing. Like the venue is always the hardest part here in New York City. Totally. So that's kind of how it worked out for a little bit. But it is a lot behind the scenes with the outreach, pitching, making sure that they're set up for success. Right. And then ensuring that like, okay, now like, let's make sure like the money that we have is well spent for the community. And so every time I've gotten funding, it has always gone fully towards the events. And just hoping to continue to do the same, and then maybe you can get even more money through sponsorships to take the community to a next level. For maybe it's merch, right? Maybe it's continue to have food and stuff at events, and just better venues, right? Those all make up really great events. And again, it's not always a venue; it was free drinks with the food. It's the people, which I'm so grateful for, and I'm trying to also lead into that mindset as well, like. Doesn't need to be some upscale event and bring some great gathering, just facilitate it. And people tend to, really have a good time on their own and find the right people to talk to.
Totally. You mentioned there too, kind of the outreaches. And I mean, that's just an impressive skill to gain. Is that something you were doing much in your day job? I mean, that's something that I've noticed just in my own life is through the YouTube channel and the content, I'm negotiating partnerships and deals, and at times, maybe I'm cold emailing a company that I want to work with. And that's a skill that like I wouldn't be doing in my day job, but I think it's just so helpful to kind of have that sales experience. So I'm curious, I mean, you've obviously been quite successful at doing that. Like I said, you've had great hosts and sponsors. Is that something you had much experience with before, or you really just kind of learned it as you went?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a lot of it has just been like learning as you go. I don't have like a formal sales background, but I was building a newsletter back in 2020 and 2021, and I did a lot of sales for our newsletter, Healthcare Huddle. And so that taught me a little bit about like how to approach, appeasing brands, what makes sense to include in the pitch, what needs to be included in the pitch. Yep. You include all the ask and the information up front in terms of like what it's going to cost and what you would get out of it, or do you first just make the pitch and it's either apply and keep it going? So I learned a lot from that, which is like a lot of trial and error, and like you're learning that in like a safe environment.
Yeah.
And then just like over time, having been at Workweek and working for a media company with a lot of established salespeople, you kind of learn how they navigate things. So that was that I took away from this space. And then it all just comes down to just being confident in what it is that you're building, and recognizing the value that you can provide for these companies, for these other individuals, and being very passionate about the fact that, like, one, I would love to have you, be a part of this. You'd be getting in front of a great community, right? And also, like, I have this community that would love to have your brand in front of them and potentially use it. So it's like just comes out to that confidence in what you're building and what you're selling, but also just confidence in general about being able to shoot your shot and be comfortable if someone says no. And I don't take it personally when someone says no. Yeah, I've sometimes been on the other end. Totally. And you just have to like move on to the next. So it was no formal training, kind of just a little bit of experimenting. And I feel like I've been selling myself personally my whole life, right? You do that in interviews, you do that when you're posting on social media. Sure. So how can you take some of the tidbits you learn from there and like storytelling and concise messaging, and then just put that in an email or talking form whenever you're in front of a brand?
Yep. Well, you mentioned Healthcare Huddle, and we'll definitely go into that. But before that, I just want to ask you, you mentioned you've been hosting these events now for almost a year. What's been your favorite moment, or probably the coolest thing that's happened from one of these events?
Yeah. I mean, besides getting to meet just so many people that I feel like I have been fans of online.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of people that I've always followed, and they came to my event, and I'm like, oh, I didn't follow you for a while. I think so. It's probably that's been really cool. But meeting Tim Gisano was sick. Very popular, New York City-based TikTok content creator.
Right.
He was someone that like I was watching for a long time prior to even starting a community, and then he all of a sudden RSVP to my first event at Hair of the Dog. And I was like head over heels about it. And he ended up coming, but I think he even like replied and wrote back, "Hey, not going to make it. I'll try to add him next one." I'm like, who am I? Like, yeah, you're responding to me. I ended up meeting him at this third event, and I went up to him and introduced myself, and shared how I'm a big fan. And when that time came in July about the idea to host like a speaking event, I'm like, well, I'd love to interview someone, right? And I thought Tim Gisano, and I reached out to Tim, and I literally texted him because he gave me his number in March. He's a big number giver, which is whatever. But I reached out to him, and he was head over heels. He goes, "Oh my God, yes. And I was like, this is incredible. Would interview Tim Gisano.
Right.
Like, this guy's going to blow up. I love his content, love his messaging. And, I sat and I prepped for the interview, and I did background on him, and being able to sit down and interview him in front of the community that's been shown up to the events and live was such an amazing experience, such a life highlight. That has probably been one of the coolest things. And I love being in your seat, interviewing people and serving as that moderator. And so being able to then do a panel with some really solid people in the New York City creator economy scene, Kaya Urif, journalist of The Information, Brendan Gahan from Mechanism, Alex Sukin from Bessemer. Like to be able to interview them and have them on a panel was so amazing. And then being able to do the same in October for another panel. So those have been really cool interactions for me, because I feel like I've been able to tap into something that I've always wanted to do, right? Which is, be like that interviewer, that content creator, but providing value for the community that's out there in New York. In real life, again, like we can do virtual interviews all we want or a virtual event, but the whole ethos of what I'm building has been the in real life interactions. So those have been really cool for me. And Tim Gisano has probably been a big highlight.
I mean, the fact that kind of one of the things you mentioned is there was the third event that you were hosting, and you then went up to him and introduced yourself, and you clearly built something that's bigger than you, and there was power behind what you were building. It wasn't just because you were promoting it at the time, and people wanted to support you. They were going because it would find value to them, and I think that's just really cool. Especially that's something kind of just in the creator economy in general that people struggle with, is creating something that is kind of doesn't require them to be promoted on their Instagram story every day. And I know you talked about like Chamberlain Coffee and Feastables, and the thing with Mr. Beast is sometimes it's how much do I promote this and creators always want to create something that outlasts that doesn't require them to plug it at the end of their video. So it's just really remarkable that you've been able to build this without necessarily having that following beforehand, and then to just be a case analysis that it really is something that provides a ton of value. So I think that's a really kind of just interesting thing to think about.
That's an interesting revelation. I never really thought about that.
Yeah.
That it kind of went in reverse. It kind of started from nothing.
Right.
I don't have 10,000, 20,000 followers. And that's always the goal. And what drives me is to be a part of something bigger than myself. What's been so motivating to want to put the time and effort into this, and even my own money into it, has been that drive that it is something bigger than myself. And I think that if it wasn't me promoting it, I guess at this point, people would still be willing to show up to the events. But I think also I have definitely leaned into the fact that Creator Economy New York City is Creator Economy New York City, but it's also me, Brett Dashevsky, who's running it. And I think having that individual who people have had the chance to meet and hear from and see, create content even in real life or on social media, has also been a driver for people maybe feeling connected to the community in some way, and that there is an individual behind it, that individual-led brand movement that we're seeing. So they have a prominent right now.
Yeah. So in New York, I don't know about you, but I certainly consider New York the best city in the world. We're very fortunate that there's plenty of other communities, and it almost seems overwhelming at times, networking events and happy hours and things like that. What do you think kind of allows you to differentiate Creator Economy NYC, and even just the events that you host from, the others that might go on throughout the week? Why should someone choose your event over another?
Yeah. Well, another really great question. One, I've always wanted it to be specific to New York City. There's a lot of people out there who are trying to build things that are like worldwide, which I think is great, but like we need to, let's get back to the community that we're building and currently. And there's a lot more value to like creating this very deep connection with like the very city and town that you work in, that we all work in, as opposed to like, I'm going to create, creator economy, sure, and anyone can come. It's like, well, where's the different value in that? So I think one of the differentiators is the fact that it's New York City based.
Okay.
And when I was branding it, all the branding is New York City based. So it's like the subway, the colors are yellow, orange, and blue. It helps you feel like connected to the city. And I really wanted to feel that way. And I kind of felt like other people are going to want to feel this way. And so that's always been kind of the goal of this. And it's not that we're exclusive to people that are outside of New York City, but we very much are in the greatest city on earth. And it's very accessible to get to where you need to go here. So why not meet in real life? And like, let's leverage the fact that New York City has this one, like everything's so tight knit here that I can host something in Midtown and people will come. I can listen to Lower Fifth, people will come. So that has always been a big differentiator. I think also it coming from me as the organizer is differentiator. And again, we're in this era of like individual-led brands. I think creator economy is bigger than me, right? But it is me that is, handling the communications and the marketing and the branding and the organizing of the paddles. And I think, how I like to see things, if I was on the other end, is what I put forward. And I think that it contributes to the event. So, okay, I want to make sure I have food that at an event that make sure everyone has dietary issues that are figured out. There's always going to be water at the event. I would think that there's music, not too loud. Like I bring up things that I personally want from like a hospitality standpoint. Yeah. And I put that forward to create a very welcoming, great environment. And then also just kind of the way that I'm putting the community on display and championing the New York City creator economy is a differentiator. So, and then who's being invited? I'm not selective with the list, but I do make sure that people who are there kind of fall into a category or a persona that other individuals who have been coming to the events would, it would make sense that they're also coming. So I make sure that when people are RSVPing that they kind of add a little bit of information about themselves, just so I can get an idea of like who's coming and how to curate the environment better, or perhaps need to connect someone with you. But again, I think the big thing is just the fact that it's New York City based for the creator economy. And I'm bringing together the ecosystem, right? It's not just creators, it's founders that are building in the space. Yeah. It's investors that are funding the space, and it's reporters that are, covering the space. There's operators who are also building there. So we're bringing the ecosystem together. And then my goal is, perhaps in 2024 and beyond, is to niche that a little bit. And sure, how can we pull from those subsets to create more intimate events or dinners? Right. But long-winded answer there. But
no, totally. And that kind of brought up something else that I was thinking is just the power of New York. And we were talking about it beforehand, but it was always my dream to move to New York. And I still certainly romanticize certain aspects of my life. But I think that's
we should.
Yeah, that's a good thing. But I think that's what helps so much with the events too, is just New York in general. Everybody else works so hard to get here. And that was one of the things that I learned from a lot of people that I spoke to. It's like their dreams too were also to be in New York and to make it in New York. And, whether it's in finance or the creator economy, whatever it may be, it's like everybody is the best of the best here. And I think that just shines through in the events, and, that passion, it makes such a difference. And I think that's one of those things that just is a competitive advantage for New York. And, maybe there is in San Francisco, but like, I don't think, I don't know how you would feel about this answer, but do you think you can start a creator economy Atlanta or, any other city, and it would be kind of, had the trajectory that you had in New York?
No, absolutely not.
And why is that? What's your thought process?
I think I agree with you in the fact that like New York is unlike any other place. And, I don't like to be like pompous about who's running New York City, but there's no debating the fact that New York is, it's the hub of a lot of different areas like finance, like media, which encapsulates the creator economy. And I recognized that, which is why I wanted to be here. And so I was like, I want to take advantage of being here, and I want to meet a lot of great people and bring a lot of great people together. And there's a lot of great people here because it is a very competitive place.
Right.
And you just do have, there's great people in a lot of other cities, but I think it's maybe more populated or condensed here in the fact that the city is really so big, it's so small,
right.
It makes things so accessible. So could you build this in LA? Sure. But LA is not as accessible in terms of like meetup in real life. You have to plan a lot ahead. I had planned most of my events and shot out columns like 2 weeks in advance. I want to get better at being ahead on that. But people have been like, great, cool. Everyone has this mindset in New York of like, we can be spontaneous.
Right.
Friday night comes around, oh, let's just go out. And you can because there's something to do everywhere that's so accessible.
Right.
So I'm very passionate about that and very thankful to New York for what it has provided here. But again, someone may just be coming home from work and they're like, I'm going to go stop by the event. There's no excuse as why you shouldn't.
Right.
And that has always been my mindset when moving here was like, I'm going to take advantage of every opportunity of being here because there is a lot of people all around the world who would kill to be here.
Right.
And here we are in New York City. Take advantage of that accessibility that it brings. Take advantage of the people who, don't take advantage of people, but take advantage of the people who are organizing things that allow you to step into, to spread your luck surface area and for something spontaneous to happen. And I love that my events serve as that spontaneous avenue. People have come and they've met creators that they end up working with, or they met someone to do video stuff for them, or they met a co-founder. I met my co-founder through my events. Those are the things that happen in New York City. Those are the things that happen when you bring people together, especially when you bring people together as frequent as Creator Economy in New York City has been doing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, kind of just the frequency of that. It's great to see familiar faces, where I don't have to start from square one. Someone already knows my background. We're able to just jot right from the jump. And that's been a really cool thing. And, you kind of mentioned it too, but there is no excuse here in New York. And that's one of the things like I try to get into the mind of some of my friends who work, corporate jobs, just graduated in Atlanta and Nashville and stuff like that. I think the perspective is so different in New York is that it's just, like I said, everybody wants to be here, but it's very normal for an email to come in at 4 p.m. or you see a post on Instagram the day of and be like, okay, I guess this is where I'm going after work.
Right.
And that was one of the reasons that I made the switch for my job and why I was so excited to be in the office 4 or 5 days a week is I'm right near Grand Central.
Yeah.
So for me, I'm going to have to walk past Grand Central if I'm going to walk home.
Exactly.
So I'm like, you know what? I might as well hop on the 6, go down to this event for an hour. What's the worst thing that'll happen?
Yeah.
And like, I'm so grateful for that because that's allowed me to meet so many amazing people that I wouldn't otherwise meet. And I think that perspective is just present for a lot more people in New York than other cities. So I think, like you were saying, it makes sense that, it's had the turnout that it's had.
And so just to add to that, I also I've gone to events that have, may take me 20, 30 minutes, 30 minutes to get to. And I recognize the amount of effort that I took to get to an event that I know a lot of people who show up to the Creator Economy New York City events have also put in similar effort.
Right.
And so I empathize with that so much that I am just so beyond grateful that people took effort to come to this event, which then goes back to your first point about like, there's value there. Like they're willing to put in that effort and travel. Yeah. Hop in the subway, whatever I talk about, it's easy, but it is time. It's time. And it's not always like the simplest thing to just plop in. So I am very appreciative of everyone who's come to the events. And again, that just comes with recognizing also what it's like to travel somewhere. And you could easily just stay at home if you want to. But being in New York, actually, there is a drive where it's like, why not? Right? We're on a flight about through space. So why not just show up?
And you threw in there one of my favorite terms. I'd love for you to explain it to the people watching, but luck surface area of luck. That's something that I've explained to so many of my friends, and I love the idea of it, but if I would just, kind of hearing it from your perspective.
So the idea of luck surface area is you basically are creating your own luck. I know a lot of people hate being like, a lot of people say, they were so lucky, or you're so lucky that like your community has you turned into what it is, and it's like, well, it wasn't lucky. I just did certain things to set myself up for now what you're perceiving as luck. But the idea of spreading luck surface area is to basically put yourself in situations that basically enable opportunity to arise or something spontaneous to arise.
Yeah.
So you have 3 events going on in a week. You go to all 3 of the events. Well, there's a higher chance that something may come along than if you just stay home.
Right.
So you're spreading the possibility of luck to come your way, which I guess luck and opportunity are just kind of synonymously. There's a quote from James Clear that talks about like the forager who's stays at home whenever is not going to stumble upon I don't know, like a fig tree or something. The forager, I forget what the quote is, but the forager who goes out, they stumble upon a bunch of dead trees, but then is more likely to come across a tree that is blossoming and can get a lot of figs and stuff. So it's just about putting yourself in situations that just enable opportunities to potentially arise. And if we do that often enough, something is bound to happen. Right, but it takes a different amount of time for everybody. But you show up to enough Creator Economy New York City events, you may see an opportunity come your way that someone else who maybe was like, I'm going to stop going. Just, you had more luck searching the spread and thought it came your way. But James Clear is a really great example. The forager one is wonderful. I don't have off the top of my head well. Sure.
That's not maybe on the screen. Yeah. But no, it's like that. The surface area of luck is something that's kind of just helped me determine so much in my life and kind of is like a guiding mission to a certain extent. I mean, I think just moving to New York in general, that's expanding your life. Especially I'm from the generation of people who graduated and plenty of people are taking a fully remote job and then I'll just go home, not pay rent. But because out there in luck, pretty small. And, even from there, okay, now you're working remote, you're working hybrid. Now you start, so I'll back up here. And I always try to visualize it in terms of the actual surface area of a ball. Yeah. And so, you start off, your surface area of luck is so big. But now you start going into the office 3 days a week. Yeah. It gets a little bit bigger. The person you can meet on the street, that could be your real wife. The person in the coffee shop could be your co-founder. That expands your surface area of luck. Now you start going to networking events. Your surface area of luck gets a little bit bigger, just good things to happen to you. You start posting on social media. Yeah. And that's been the biggest thing for me is just there's so many ways for good things to happen to me in my life. And I've just kind of created my life to be, I could get an email tomorrow for work that changes my life. And I get an email for my YouTube channel for so many different things. And it's like, that's so exciting and just brings so much passion in my days. And I love it. So I always try to explain that to people because, there's, especially living here in New York, it's just, there's so many opportunities there. And you never know what one event, one conversation, one interaction on the street is going to lead to.
Exactly. And you're such a great example of the sphere. That is just such a driving factor for me as well. And it's not like, you have to go out and party with people. Like, sure, you do it once in a while, but things like this. And then when someone down the line is like, man, how'd you get there? It's like, I couldn't even define why I got there. But all I know is I have always had this mentality of spreading my luck surface area, which mentally and subconsciously has just driven me to take advantage of opportunities. So I kind of put in there as like, you got to seize opportunities. You got to just show up, shoot your shot. And those things, ultimately over time compound and can lead to great things.
Yeah. I mean, hey, the power of compound interest, and it's just released. That could be a whole podcast in and of itself. Yeah. Well, that's just like, again, one of the things that gets me so excited is, we're all realistically at the start of our careers. You know what I mean? And like, that's what I've enjoyed so much with the YouTube channel is I get to interact with so many other young, ambitious people. And like, okay, sure, they're applying for an internship. They're an analyst at a company. But where are those people going to be 20 years down the road, like 5 years down the road? Those are people, I've had conversations with and like I've helped out in one way or another, whether it's through a networking call or just watching a YouTube video. And like, I just know that that's going to compound and turn into something really massive. And, maybe some of that is just what helps me justify the work, that I put into something. But, the power of compound interest and on top of just the surface area block, it's so exciting. So I'm very grateful you brought that up because I think you said it way more succinctly than I ever could. So kudos to you.
Thanks. I was very long-winded. But this is great. It's a great thing that spread your luck surface area. It's huge.
Yeah. So kind of shifting gears now, you mentioned Healthcare Huddle. Mm-hmm. You started that a few years back, and then I understand you sold it, and now you've reacquired it. Is that correct?
Yeah, I still have some.
I saw that kind of on LinkedIn. Can you walk us through kind of that full process? I mean, do you have a background? I don't think you have a background in like, the healthcare space per se, formally. So kind of what led you to go down that path? And it seems like it's been quite a ride so far.
And it really has been. So the idea for Healthcare Huddle sparked in late 2019. My brother, Jared, who was in med school at the time, he's now in residency, he kind of had this idea for creating ultimately the morning brew of healthcare. And at the time, like that idea kind of made sense. It was popular. And he basically had this idea because when he was in med school, he recognized that a lot of his classmates knew a lot about human body systems, but not about the healthcare system.
Right.
I was in my senior year of college, and I had a job locked in at Capital One. And I was like, he approached me about this idea, and I was always very entrepreneurial and had a lot of great ideas in college that I just never like moved forward with. And I was like, it seems like a great opportunity to build something. And so I was like, I'll take on kind of marketing the social media stuff and create an Instagram. I started to create graphics on Canva around that. And my brother would create the content, and then I would like turn it into something pretty. And then I wanted to lead the branding for this. And ultimately, it really started to like pick up steam. And he launched a newsletter on MailChimp. That was before there was Substack, right? Beehive. So we were using MailChimp and designed it basically to mimic Morning Brew, but it was focused on healthcare news. And then ultimately, of course, COVID came around. What a perfect time to start a healthcare newsletter. And we started to gain more traction there, especially on our Instagram, which was like my bread and butter. Just doing a lot of social media marketing to grow the brand, and that was serving as a big top of funnel to drive subscribers. And we were all growing organically. And then we started to get a lot of outreach from people just during COVID that were home from college that like wanted to have something to do, and they wanted to contribute to running the newsletter or creating content for social media. So we built out a team of contractors ultimately, and we're like truly like, okay, we kind of have a company, but it's not full time. These are all just part-time people. So we kept with that. You want to talk about compounding? I mean, we sent out a newsletter. We posted on social media daily. I think our goal was like a daily post on social media, and you started to see the effects. And we ultimately, by the time it was like 2021 of November, we had some 10,000 followers, which is huge at the time. I mean, because like Instagram didn't have the big discoverability tools like you have right now with TikTok. And TikTok was also just getting big. But I kind of took advantage of the fact that I was working from home now once I graduated, and I had this extra time to kind of work on this side project with Healthcare Huddle. And then ultimately, spreading your like surface area and posting on social media, this guy, Adam Ryan, came around. It was the president of the Huddle, which was like another newsletter like Morning Brew. And he ended up joining as an advisor to us. And then approached us a couple months down the line that he had this idea for this company called Workweek, which was going to be like a collective of industry brands, industry exo brands, that he wanted us to kind of do it as like that partner brand. So we basically had to turn our newsletter around because he wanted us to have like an individual creator, right? So this is when the trend was kind of moving away from it's like, oh, it's just Wall Street Journal, like it's a Morning Brew article, to like, oh, it's a Morning Brew article by X. Right. So we will have these contractors that were amazing and super talented writing the newsletter, but we basically had to transform our strategy to set ourselves up for this acquisition with Workweek. And got back to basics to Jared, my brother in med school, writing the newsletter. That I was like going to continue to be like an operator and limiting it. And I personally saw it as an opportunity to venture more into the creator economy meetup space, especially as this creator economy was growing. And I really believed in what Adam and Becca, the other co-founder, were building. And I was like, I want to be part of this from my own personal brand standpoint. So we ultimately decided what's best for the brand is to sell it to Workweek. And Jared, my brother, would remain the content creator. And he would write the newsletter, and then I would be an operator at Workweek. And I would get to work on other, creators and media side. It wasn't healthcare. I did not have a healthcare background. And I was sick and tired of people being like, you're a healthcare guy. I'm like, I don't have any healthcare background. I don't know what you should do during COVID. You should use a newsletter. And then the content itself, that I never was really writing because we shifted to get a lot more technical. Talk about the business of healthcare. I don't have any knowledge on that. I was just really interested and good at marketing and branding and building the newsletter up. And the biggest thing was that a lot of people thought that Healthcare Huddle was some 5-year-old brand. And I'm like, we are a couple months old. That's maybe like the biggest compliment we had. But I wanted to do what I built for Healthcare Huddle for all the other brands at Workweek. And I was able to kind of get to do that. I made my goal when I joined Workweek that, okay, I want to use this as an opportunity to establish myself in the industry and just learn a ton of me as a sponge. And that was my goal over the past 2 years. And now like here I am. I feel like in a completely different mindset than I was then, even though it was great opportunity to be able to our company. And ultimately, when we left Workweek, Jared also left Workweek. Workweek generously, through whatever terms we had, gave the brand back to Jared to continue to do. And they were incredibly helpful in helping to grow it. And helping to build out some potential partners for it. And I'm just grateful for what I learned at Workweek from the media space. And now here we are. That's kind of like long story short. But one, I didn't like being like in the healthcare space when I wasn't in healthcare. I liked the media creator economy world, so moved into Workweek, and then I wanted to make a name for myself, which then have kind of moved me into making my own personal content about an area that I have been studying for a while and have been very passionate about, which is the creator economy. And here we are today, and now it's like, wow, and I want to give back to this community and keep growing it, and that's where we are with Creator down New York City and everything else that's being built.
And we'll certainly go down that path, but I know you mentioned started off at Capital One. What did it take for you to kind of take that step from the typical corporate, pipeline job to, okay, I'm going to venture off and do this more creative thing? I'm sure you faced some adversity kind of just in going through and making that decision, but what was going through your mind? Was it an easy decision, or was it a little bit tougher to kind of do something that didn't have a blueprint?
I come from a family of people who they're lawyers, so they did a very secure very secure job. Okay, so I'm out here working for a corporation in a very cushy job at Capital One, right? They're a Fortune 500 company, wonderful, everything's good. But when this opportunity came through, I was the one that really was making a leap. My brother was going to stay in med school. His path was very defined. My path was much more, I'm going to take a risk. But I kind of saw it as, I'm willing to take a salary cut because I see this as an opportunity to propel me forward. And there was this example of something that I saw on Twitter that basically was like the hill that you're on or something. And it was like, right now you're on this hill and you can go and try to like keep climbing and maybe it'll be on a higher hill. It's not guaranteed. And I kind of saw that as like, okay, I'm going to take the jump and maybe the jump is going to be on a higher hill. I think that ended up kind of being true. Like here we are. But I was joining a startup, very risky. You see the risk unfolded. I no longer had a company, but it was a risk that I was willing to take. And again, I made sure to like build something for myself to kind of serve as that like collateral, that protection. So when I go forward, I can maybe jump to a continued higher mountain on. But it was a decision that you took a lot of thinking. Fortunately, my parents were very supportive about it and talked through and just felt like it made sense. And it was like, I kind of had the mindset, like, why not? I was 22 at the time, so young. And I'm like, just make the jump. I was living at home at the time of our first situation. I'm like, let's make the jump. I was confident in Healthcare Huddle. I was confident in Workweek and the brands they were bringing on that I'm like, this is going to be not necessarily secure, but it's into something that's going to work out in one way or another.
There's a little bit more evidence that it's going to go one way.
And it's going to go over another, whether it's I stay at Workweek and Workweek sells for $1 billion or I end up leaving, but because I have worked at Workweek and built the connections that I've built or ended up an idea sparked, that's where I am. And that was one of the things also, I'm like, I'm not feeling creatively rebel at Capital One. I was in a project management role, but I felt so fueled by Healthcare Huddle. I was like, how can I put myself in a position that continued to allow me to keep fueling myself that then puts me on that higher mountain. So it was a difficult decision. It's always a difficult decision, but you kind of need to take those risks and assess. And then like you think about all the entrepreneurs that you look up to, and how they also took leaps. And I was like, look, worst comes to worst, I go out and find a new job and we start from square one, but we will figure it out. And we have enough runway from a life standpoint to write that out.
It's interesting because going back to kind of books, and I always think of Outliers. It's one of my favorite books, Melting by Wealth. It's one of those things that you might not see it in the moment, but I feel like in your story, there's so many things that could be that outlier moment, that you started something, you met someone at this certain event, the creator economy is still so young. And so just to taking that leap, like it's one of those things where we're talking about compounding, but you never know, like that could be that outlier moment. And sometimes you just want to capture that if you stayed on the one path. So I think it's just always interesting to consider things in that perspective.
Yes, I so agree with that.
Well, so now kind of shifting gears again, you are quite the content creator yourself. I'm always blown away by your LinkedIn posts. I now see that you're posting on Instagram, and I think it's on TikTok. I was blown away by the quality of that.
Thank you.
You know, first talk about LinkedIn. Where do you get the inspiration? I mean, I don't have to post daily, but you post very consistently, and it's consistently high quality.
Thank you.
And it's stuff that's still super relevant to the creator economy space. How do you find that inspiration, and what is kind of your workflow for doing that?
Yeah. Well, it's great to hear that. You don't really hear from a lot of people about your content other than as someone shooting a like.
Sure.
And so to hear somebody that's high quality, this guy, I really appreciate that, because there's a lot of effort that goes into it. When I wanted to be a creator myself because I was around so many different creators at Workweek, and I was always itching, like when I was at Healthcare Huddle, like I want to be a creator here, but I don't write creator healthcare we talked about. But I made myself a goal, mainly when I joined Workweek, like to post more consistently on LinkedIn and Twitter, and then Twitter got taken over by Elon, and then I just saw at the end of 2022 how much LinkedIn was gaining traction, people talking about it. And so I made a prediction that 2023 is going to be the year for LinkedIn. And I'm like, well, I need to embody that. I need to actually practice what I'm preaching. So I was like, I'm doubling that on LinkedIn, and I have, and it's been pretty very fruitful. But yeah, I made a goal. I'm going to post I think once a day for a while, and then the content slowly evolved. And then I got more comfortable with 3 times a week is good enough to keep the content high quality. So I really get you get better and better at creating content. You know this as well, being a creator just over time, like talent, and you get more efficient, and your ideas get better, and you know what you should write about and how to angle it. That took me the going year to really figure out. So I get a lot of my content ideas. I write about the creator economy and the people and platforms that power it. That's literally my guardrails. So when I see a piece of news or something, I'm like, does this relate to the creator economy? Does it pertain to any creators or founders or operators, or does it pertain to a platform? And so maybe I'll see TikTok shut down their creator fund, and I'm like, okay, well, I obviously need to report on this. More recently today, I saw that Riz was named the word of the year by Oxford.
Yep.
And I'm like, okay, this is interesting. And then it popped in my head, well, Riz has become a very popular role on social media. And then I was reading about it, and it all stemmed from content creator Kai Sanat.
Right.
Started using that word on his streams with his friends, and then it gained traction. And I'm like, here's people and platforms. So I was able to take a piece of news about the word of the year that's really top of funnel. It pertains to everybody.
Yeah. And
then tell a story about how it happened because it relates to the creator economy. So I get a lot of my inspiration from just keeping up with current events. So I'll look on Flipboard. I'll just be on Twitter and LinkedIn very frequently.
Yeah.
A sickening amount. It's god awful. And that to me will spark ideas. So maybe I'll see someone write something, and I'm like, oh, I can maybe have my own spin on that. Or someone will report on news, and I'm like, oh, I want to share that. And it doesn't matter that someone also wrote about it. It matters that it's Brett writing about it, much from its perspective.
Yeah.
People, I don't think necessarily follow me for just the updates, but they want to hear what I have to say about it, or the way that I write about it, which sometimes I try to be humorous, I try to be lighthearted, because LinkedIn can be very buttered down.
Yeah.
So that's really where I get my inspiration from. And then I'm trying to lean more into video content, which, as you know, is so difficult. And it's just a different way of writing scripts and delivering. So sometimes I'm like, well, how can I take the same approach to my LinkedIn posts, which are already medium form,
right,
and then just turn it into a script that is a bit more animated for video.
Right.
And I already feel really confident in my speaking abilities and delivery abilities that I just need to have a good hook and just tell the story well. But the work is already done sometimes through the writers itself.
Yeah.
So the inspiration kind of just comes from continuously being in the environment, and it's not easy. It may look easy to someone reading it, or the consistency, and as a creator, you kind of become blind to that.
Yeah.
Because you just keep posting. But it kind of just comes just over time and just consuming it a lot. I think the best creators are the best consumers, right, of content. You can't just be blind with everything, then go and think you're going to write a banger. It may work occasionally if it was outliers, but
right,
for me, I feel like it's just been a lot of being online.
Yeah, no, that makes total sense. And I think LinkedIn is probably the one platform that transitions into a TikTok so nicely, especially the format that you have, where you do have a bit of a hook at the beginning, that draws the reader in on LinkedIn, and potentially the viewer on TikTok. That's been one of the challenges for me, and one of the benefits of YouTube that's been easier for me is I have long form content. And so someone's going to watch my video for the content. So I feel less pressure for that Mr. Beastification where the first 10 seconds it used to have the hook and, all of the stuff that he talks about. But I think you've over time have learned, okay, what works for LinkedIn posts, what doesn't. Oftentimes, I'm sure it has that hook. So it's just a more natural transition. Also, on LinkedIn, it's only going to be so long. You're not going to write a whole novel because someone's going to click off of it. So that also kind of transitions well over to TikTok compared to YouTube, where maybe that's not enough for a full video. So I think this is really interesting, and you've done a great job with that so far. So kudos to you for the consistency.
Thank you.
But one other thing kind of along that vein is, you kind of talked about you're now doing the writing, and through the Creator Economy events, you are able to interview people. Now, something you always kind of wanted to do. I think that's just interesting, and something that I tell people too is so many times we have ideas of what our dream job is. And I'm not going to know quote, but someone like Benjamin Franklin or somebody said, like, you can just do your dream job. You don't need permission to do that. And a lot of times for me, like, that's what this YouTube channel provides me the opportunity to do. Where it's like, okay, I'm not a talk show host, but here I am talking to a really interesting person, hopefully having an engaging conversation, and I think that's kind of what your Creator Economy NYC has allowed you to do. It's, you typically probably want to be interviewing someone in front of an audience in your day job, but all of a sudden you now have that opportunity. So I think it's just, again, that framework. But along those lines, I'm curious kind of what you think your competitive advantage is. We've talked about outliers, we've talked about surface area of luck, but what do you think allows you to stand out from other people? What do you think your competitive advantage is in the workforce, just in life?
That's a great question.
It's a tough one. That wasn't on the list.
That's a real one. My competitive advantage, I think it really comes down to having a lot of high agency. So just like being able to overcome obstacles or difficulties is a big competitive advantage. I'm just like a really driven hard worker. And there's this quote where it's like, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And I remember hearing that in high school. And I never felt like I was the smartest in high school, but I really had to work hard. I couldn't just skimp by a test. I always had to study really hard. I was never like the most athletic. I always kind of had to work a little extra harder than everybody else. And I kind of feel like that just like builds you up over time from a great nurture standpoint, like grit. And then when I was in college, I really learned this because like I had to set a goal of getting into the business school. I didn't get in when I originally went to Maryland. And I really had to work super hard to do well in school to get into the business school, which I ultimately ended up doing. And like, that was my first time in life where I kind of recognized like I beat out other people. A lot of other people didn't get in and I got in, and it's like I beat out other people. And I'm not saying that they didn't work hard, but I'm like, I know that I did everything that I could to ensure that I was going to, get a high GPA. I joined a bunch of clubs. I met a lot of people in network to, maybe give me a leg up in some way, shape, or form, but I worked really hard. So I think my competitive advantage is just that drive. And I feel like if someone wants to come up against me, I just feel confident that I can work harder than them and, just maybe use a mix of strategy and creativity to really level things up. That to me, I mean, this is the first time I've actually really ever thought about that, but I think, high agency is really important and just like a very high desire to achieve, great things. And I am fortunate to have been surrounded growing up by people who I feel like express very similar, very similar mindset, but it really all comes down to your mindset. Like there is nothing else. I mean, it could sound so voodoo, but like your mind can achieve anything your mind can conceive and believe. And you get better the more you kind of train yourself at like, I can do this, I can get this going. And that to me has allowed, to have that high agency and to have this high drive. And when I want to achieve something, I'm like, we're going to get it. We're going to get it. We're going to do it. And also just having judgment when it's like time to maybe be like, all right, that's not working out. Time to step back on to the next. But that's probably what I would say in terms of a competitive advantage.
Great answer. And, I think that is something that's just so important to kind of consider when you think about your career. And for me, people watching might know, but I switched my career 6 months in. I was doing consulting at KPMG, and I just wasn't super passionate about it. And took the leap, and now I'm at JP Morgan. And really a lot of that came from looking at what are my competitive advantages. And I saw kind of the timeline and the progression of my career at KPMG in the group that I was in. And I just knew it wasn't playing to my strengths. You know, I was looking at kind of the group and the day-to-day responsibilities, and it just wasn't what I was truly good at. And that was kind of a scary feeling, realizing that. I mean, you might be able to get by, and I was doing just fine, but I knew that wasn't going to result in longevity. And so I wanted to pursue something that I had the opportunity to be the best in the world at. And I think this is it changes your perspective on a lot of things, to think about, what do I have the opportunity to be the best in the world at? And I think when you find that, you know, even if it's not what you're doing in your career and your day job, but then start posting on content. Like Ali Abdullah talks about it a lot, is kind of his competitive advantage was being at, I don't know if you're familiar with Ali Abdullah, but, you know, he says so much being at Cambridge Medical School, you know, that was his competitive advantage. So we really tried to hone in on that, take advantage of that. I mean, the cloud of being at a fantastic school, you know, and at times it might seem vague, but you really have to pursue that. And that's what can allow you to stand out. And I think it's just always in life. I mean, certain people are going to have different competitive advantages, but, you know, it's just such an important thing to consider that I think a lot of people early on in their careers don't think about. And so, yeah, I'm grateful. I was the one, I just asked that question to kind of get you to think about that, because it's something that's also helped me kind of just with my own journey.
Kudos to you you're so early in your career for making a switch 6 months into a job. I mean, that is daunting in and of itself. Like, you want to talk about, you know, making a big jump. That's really great, and good on you for like kind of recognizing this is not where I want to be. A lot of people don't really figure that out until later in life. Yeah, they're kind of in a position where it's like, I didn't have enough time to build this momentum.
Yeah.
You mentioned Ali Abdullah, great creator. I love his stuff. Another thing you mentioned, another thing that's competitive advantage, I think, a confidence in shooting your shot is also a huge thing.
Yeah.
The confidence in like being okay with rejection is also another competitive advantage.
Yeah.
That like, I actually feel more. That's what I feel is actually I strong, more passionate about. In that, like, I will go after whatever it is that I want to go after, and do not care. I don't care about the judgment of those that are around me. I want to go after and get it done and try to accomplish it. And if there's rejection there, there's rejection there. But at the end of the day, there's value to carve out in that journey.
Yeah.
So being able to shoot your shot opens up a lot more doors for you than you can imagine. And I always try to tell people who are like, I'm really trying to move into this role of the company. I'm like, have you spoken with anybody? Right? No. You're not going to move into the job if you don't shoot your shot, if you're not setting yourself up for success. And like, I'm clearly very passionate about that. And that actually sparks something in me. But a lot of where I am in life has been just shooting my shot, has been just throwing out, hey, I'm going to organize this event. You want to come? Hey, Tim, do you want to come on my panel? Cool. Amazing. And being very forward about it. Not like, no problem if you don't want to. Right. Don't even add that. Just say, would you want to be on this? I'm love to have you there. I'm not available. I'm all looking to do it. Great. No problem. On to the next. But just, again, that the agency is involved in that.
Yeah.
But just a desire and a comfortableness in shooting your shot will take you so far. And it'll have you go up to that CEO at the meetup, right? You're at JP Morgan. Jamie Dimon is at a lunch.
Yep.
Are you going to sit and tremble and be like, it's Jamie Dimon? Sure, it's very daunting, but sometimes you got to swallow it. You got to go up and like, very nice to meet you, and pitch yourself. And that could always, I really like that person. And I'm telling you, Jamie Dimon, same type of person, he spent his life shooting his shot and taking advantage of opportunities. And just a lot of successful people recognize when people have a certain successful drive.
Right.
And so that's something that I think is really interesting. And
yeah.
Touching on a previous point about carving out your own career, not everything needs to be a job at a specific point. And so it's like, you may be doing your finance job, whatever it is, and it pays nicely and you're learning a lot, but maybe it's not your dream job. No worries. You're creating content on the side. And perhaps that's something that you would want to do full time if you could. Okay, you're going to have to work a little hard right now to do both. And there is no problem with working hard. My dad told me that recently because I'm in the midst of like doing these things and looking for a full-time job. He's like, there's no problem, but have a full-time job that, is a nice compliment and pays well and is a good credibility factor, like the Cambridge for Ali of it all. And then you got to do stuff in the morning and nighttime. There's nothing wrong with working hard, especially in your 20s and 30s. when perhaps you don't have a lot of other responsibility other than yourself and the things that are your jobs. So, but you can make your career. You can do things that you want to do it. So for me, I've always been very interested in content and like media. And I always say in a second life, I would have been like a broadcaster,
Sure,
or gone down that route. So when I had this opportunity to like interview, I was like, who should interview? I'm like, I'm going to interview Tim.
Yeah.
I was literally thinking of getting someone else to interview. I'm like, wait, this is my opportunity to lean into what I want to do. And now I get to do that. And you created your own position to do that. And maybe it's the same idea with you interviewing me and whoever else it may be, but you can literally go out there and create what it is you want to create. I have a good friend who bakes bread and bakes pizza, and he loves it. And he's not a baker full time, but he's literally able to do something that's a dream of his on the side of having a full-time job, which having a full-time job is something that's necessary for him. But he, he'll wake up early to make the dough and bread that he wants for later. And like, he works hard at it because he's passionate about it and he cares about it. And so it is okay, to work a little hard and to carve out that path. And, maybe the time will come as things compound.
Right. Yeah. I love this. We're definitely going back and forth here. And one of the things you mentioned before is just that grit. And I think when I look back in my own life, like sometimes it's better to have that failure and then overcome it that's so much better for the long run than you being able to do it the right way the first time, because you learn so much more that way. And it also builds that self-efficacy. And I think that's the advantage for you is, when you've overcome something and you've worked hard and you actually have accomplished that, it then gives you that confidence that you can go do anything you want.
Yes.
So I'm grateful to have had that in my own life.
Yeah.
And you mentioning that just really brought that out. So one final thing I want to go down is, I understand you're big into setting goals clearly and planning out kind of what your life is going to look like to a certain extent. Yeah. Because at the same time, you've also gone through a lot of, lefts and rights and hills. You mentioned. What is the one goal that you have for 2024 that December 31st can come around and you can say, this was a good year. I'm proud of what I did.
Yeah. Oh man, there's definitely a lot of things on my mind, but I never try to be too planned.
Yeah.
I don't know if laziness is like, I want to do a 3-5 year plan, but like, I don't see the purpose in that. I think some people are better off just like mentally having and the drive and ambition to get to a certain place. And just like working towards that subconsciously, it's in there, but you know where you want to go.
Yeah.
And some of that I don't always know how to put it into words, but it's there. So in 2024, I would say one thing is I want the community to continue to thrive. So I'd be really satisfied at the end of 2024. And it's crazy, 2024. If I was able to end up doing one event a month, which was a mix of mixers and panel events, and perhaps have been able to take the events to a next level in terms of having like a consistent venue, having consistent sponsors, that would just mean the world to me, and of course mean the world to the community. And then having successfully added a newsletter layer would be very up. So with that, I want to add a newsletter where I spotlight people in the creator economy here in New York City. And with that, I think I'm going to double maybe those interviews that I do for the spotlights as a podcast. So I'd love to kind of have this whole media arm of New York City. And at the same time, I want to continue to create content for myself. So I have a follower goal, I'm still trying to hit, which is 10,000. If I hit that in 2024, I'd be so immensely satisfied. And it feels so good because I truly have grown just organically on consistent posting. I haven't really had like a ton of big shares or anything like that to like beef up, which I could totally use. But that would be really great. So I want to be able to keep consistent. So the theme that I have in my mind right now for 2024 is to double down on what's been working. I feel like I don't have a lot of bandwidth, and it would just be right for me to add new stuff to my plate unless it truly helped elevate what I currently feel is already working. So double down on what's been working, and I think being a full-time role that is helping to elevate those other areas would be also a truly great thing at the end of next year. So when I look back on this, I hope that I've been able to stay consistent or accomplish one of those things that would be really satisfactory for me.
Okay. And you said
I got a 6-pack. I love that be there.
Of course. You said double down on what's working. From your perspective, what is it that is truly working for you at this point?
Yeah, I mean, when I say double down on what's working, it's like, okay, so I have the community in flight. That's been working. Like, no need to veer away from that. Like, try to keep that going. Maybe add a layer to it. So, like, the layer would be the newsletter.
Yeah.
Okay, add the newsletter. And then once you're able to maybe get that going, maybe you could add another layer. So keep that going. Your content on, like, LinkedIn and now short form, that's been kind of working right now. You know you have to do. Double down on that. Keep that going. Don't get distracted by any shiny objects. Just focus on what's been working here. And then I'm working on this AI comment simplifier tool. That's been in flight. That's being built and working. Let's double down on that. So really just like things that have been in flight this year that had made it to the end of the year, I would say. Right. That like didn't like not make it. But some stuff hasn't necessarily made it. Like I was like really focused on building an audience on Twitter and through a certain way. And I'm like, it's not really working for me. I recognize that LinkedIn's working a lot better. I'm going to double down there. I'll still tweet, but it won't be or X nowadays. But yeah, so for me, double downing is focus on what's been working and be very, very conscious about what it is else that you're adding. And so to the community, other opportunities have come up. And sometimes you're like, it's not where my head's at right now. It's not worth my time. So maybe it's a consultant opportunity. It's like, I'd love to do that, but is it going to help or, diminish some of the other areas I'm working on from a time standpoint? And you have to realize there's also other stuff beyond work, beyond like relationships and health that are also like difficult to balance amongst other stuff you're working on. So I don't want any of those to falter. So yeah, it's really just like what has made it through, I guess, like the filter of 2023. Yeah. And like maybe those things are enough to keep doubling down on and see how they compound. As opposed to doing a lot of things in a mediocre way. Can you do a few things in a really great way? Even if the few things to a lot of people is actually you're doing a lot, which I do feel like I'm doing a lot. Yeah. I'm sure if I took away some, they could help me be even better at certain stuff. But yeah, that's kind of like how I'm thinking about it. Okay. Yeah.
And I mean, I can relate to what you said about never having something get a ton of shares or go viral. And we talked about Ali Abdaal earlier, and one of his quotes is, one of the worst things that can happen to your YouTube channel or your creator journey is actually going viral at the beginning. Yeah. Because then all of a sudden, for whatever piece of content that is, your entire audience is expecting you to do that. And like maybe that's not what you really want to do. Maybe it is, and that's great. But also, I think just having that grit again and building that audience step by step, compounding effect, like that makes it so much more rewarding when you do get to that point. And again, of course, you're still posting evergreen content, and that's the beauty of that is, especially TikTok. I've had that happen. That's like, I ran a video from weeks ago. All of a sudden now the algorithm starts pushing, and that's great. It's amazing. But it's just like, I look at my channel, and it's easy to compare yourself. You're scrolling through LinkedIn, you see someone with 10,000 likes or whatever, and it's just another 20-something-year-old. And especially on YouTube and what things are the algorithm based, it's just like you gotta just trust the process. And you mentioned the Cameron Galbraith quote before, and that was of course Joel Embiid. But what quote was that? The hard work beats talent. So whereby when you said that, I was like, I imagined. Yeah, I knew that was Kevin Durant. I mean, it was. Yeah, I can see the one that I know. I don't think was Kevin Durant, but okay. Well, yeah, maybe I don't know if it is Michael Gretzky or I see Michael Scott, but yeah, I think that's just like one of the things that also fuels you to keep going. Is also maybe tomorrow is when that hits, when that goes viral. And I think it's nice to kind of have that excitement because you wake up every day is a new day, and you want something good to happen to you. And that's what happens when you
spreading the surface area. And all over is like the surface area. If you post 3 times a week, 2 times a week, I don't care what it is, you are spreading your opportunity to eventually go viral. That's what they talk about a lot.
Yes.
Creating content and working with creators has been some of the most the mentally training things that I've ever experienced, because when I first started writing on LinkedIn or Twitter, like you're essentially speaking to an audience of no one, right? Like whatever, you're going to get 1 like, 2 likes, no likes at all. There's sometimes when I post and I get no likes, and I'm like, what? But you recognize that that's just one post amongst many, and sometimes you need to zoom out. And so I like to envision that it's like a movie documentary, and it zooms out and it shows everything that's been out. It's like, okay, that really is meaningless. Well, it's small, but it's mighty. But take things day by day. You post tomorrow, and my post gets X amount of likes, and I gain X amount of followers, or So something like that. And I think a lot of those are vanity metrics, but the simple basis of just posting consistently has been something that I had just come to be satisfied by myself. I don't care how it performs. I obviously want to pay attention to like what performed well because I try to double down on that and mimic that. But I am just comfortable with the fact that I ended up posting consistently, and I'm very happy and comfortable with the work that I put out there. And I learned a lot while doing it. But sometimes there's a quote that's like, the only standard you should be striving to meet is your own. Yeah, right? Stop trying to meet the standard of like, you see that person that posted and you want to, well, I should do what they're doing. It's like, just no, try to meet your own standard. And what is that standard? And should be like getting better each time. And that's what I kind of strive for. So it's like the 1% better every day.
Yeah.
So I try to evolve my posts and everything and make them better each time. And eventually something's going to hit. Something's going to hit. And when it hits, give you a text. I'll be like, it happened.
Yeah.
So like right now I've been posting more frequently on TikTok, and it's like, I had my mindset of like, oh, this one's going to hit. And I'm like, well, hold on a sec. Who am I to be deserving of it hitting?
Right.
It's like my third one just consistently. And do you want it to hit right now? No, you want it. I would love to hit in the middle of the journey where it's like you've been putting the time and effort. Some things have been gaining traction. You're gaining an audience, but all of a sudden there's that big snowball effect, that Super Bowl, that peak, whatever it may be. And that's just like that luck surface area that it hit. It just comes through iterations.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Well, Brett, I know you have a basketball game you got to get to, but before we leave, is there anything you want to plug? Everything will be on the screen, but I'll let you kind of leave it with, for someone who's listening to this or watching this, what is one just piece of advice, one tip that has helped guide your life? I know we've talked a lot about different principles and stuff like that today, but something that maybe you wish you heard back when you were 23 years old, 20 years old, I'll give you the opportunity to speak from the heart there.
Also, I think the one thing is that I like to live by is be your future self's best friend. So whenever you're doing something, think about how your future self is going to look back and be like, I'm so glad I did that. Whether it's going to the gym or, writing on your goals for 2024, or ultimately starting posting, right? They always say the best time to post was yesterday. The best time to get started was yesterday. So, it's right now, it's December. If you start posting or doing something you've been putting off now, in January and February, you're going to look back and be like, I'm so glad that I got started in December. And you're like, you were your future self's best friend. Same idea goes on a smaller level for like folding your laundry when it's done. Just fold it, because then when it comes bedtime and you're chilling and you want to just let in bed and you're like, I already folded my laundry. I'm so glad I just did it then. And you're your future self's best friend. So lean into that. Try to live by that, doing things for yourself that your future self will look back on and thank you for. And then to plug myself, you can follow me on LinkedIn and Twitter. It's at Brett Dash _ or just my full name, Brett Dashevsky. And check out Creator Economy New York City and what we're building. You can go to creatoreconomynyc.com. And we're also on the social platforms. Just look that up. And I think that's it.
Perfect. Well, Brett, again, appreciate you coming on, being the first guest. You set a pretty high bar, so I'll look forward to what's in store of the future. Yeah, looking forward to getting plenty of more events, and just can't wait to watch the journey. So you did. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you so much. This is great.
And with that, thank you all so much for watching this first episode of my new podcast series, Invested. Please let me know what you think down below in the comments. I would love to hear your biggest takeaways and who you'd like me to interview next. A final thank you to Brett Dashevsky for his time, and to you, the listener, for allowing me to pursue my own passions. Until next time, peace.